remember your name and your word. And he used to say, if it's not true, don't say it. If it's not yours, don't take it.
I think one of the things I pride myself on, and I don't feel like a lot of people do it now, is like your word is your bond. And I feel like back in the day, like if someone said something, like your honor meant, you meant it. And I feel like nowadays that people say stuff and they never actually do it. Or they have no intention of doing it. You must see that in politics.
I don't really care who gets the credit for something. You know, if the school gets built, that is a collaborative effort. It wasn't the mayor. I see kids, what the stuff that they eat, the lack of physical fitness that they have. We're going to be in trouble as a country down the road. We're going to see a lot of diabetes, heart problems, strokes with this younger generation until we learn that taking care of your body will then benefit society. See, we don't want you to be a burden on us.
Right.
We don't want you to be a burden on society.
Well, man, thank you for taking this time to do the podcast with me. So for those who don't know, it's Mayor Kenneth Hopkins. So you've been the Cranston mayor since 2002?
Yes. No, 2020.
2020.
20.
Okay. And your dog, Izzy.
Izzy.
All right, so Izzy is joining us
Izzy is
today.
the first dog in City Hall.
I got you.
She's a welcomer.
I heard she has like a gold food dish and a gold
whatever
water dish.
she wants. Yeah.
So let's start with your transition from not being in politics to becoming a politician and then winning the mayorship. Can you share that journey with me?
Sure. Well, I had spent 37 years in education, 27 in the Cranston Public Schools as both the athletic director and a teacher at Cranston East. When I retired in 2015, I had planned on waiting a couple of years, and then my wife, who was a teacher at UB Bain, we were going to retire together and travel. In the meantime, while she was still working, I retired from both teaching and coaching college baseball. And I did that I coached in college for 40 years. And unfortunately, my wife got sick. At that point, I had already been elected to the city council as a citywide councilman. And that kind of gave me something to do every day, gave me a purpose, which I was trying to fill that void and waiting for her to retire. And then one day she came home and she was not feeling well, had a pain in her side. So we went to the doctors, went to Rhode Island Hospital to get it checked. They took an MRI and they showed something there. And then from there, I made a decision to go up to Dana-Farber in Boston just to get a biopsy to make sure that everything was okay. So we did that. We did the biopsy. By this time, it was into the summer, and we had planned a 2-week vacation with our grandkids down in Disney World. So we did that. We get down to Disney, and a week into the vacation, I got a call from the doctors in Boston saying that it was stage 4 liver cancer and that we should get her back immediately. So we packed everything up, changed our plane tickets, flew back home the very next day, and starting on that Monday, we went to Dana-Farber to begin the whole process of trying to treat her illnesses. And by that point, it had spread from her liver to her lungs. And I always found it ironically that she never drank, never smoked, was petite, always in great shape. And we did that for approximately 5 months, back and forth, both draining the fluid buildup in her lungs, which was an event in itself, and then the very next day, 6 hours of chemo treatments at Dana-Farber. Then we'd come home. The next week, we'd go back and do the same thing over again. So we did that for 5 months, and she got to a point where she had a couple of strokes based on the chemo treatments, and she ended up passing away after 5 months. From the day we found out till December 10th of that year. So.
And how do you think that changed you as a person, right? Because we have this layout of life, how it's going to go.
Mhm.
Beautiful wife, right? And it changes. So how do you adjust to that?
Yeah, the process itself was extremely difficult because I not only had myself, but I had a house that we had built and raised our families in, and then I had my young 3 kids and my grandkids that I had to step up for to be the leader of the family. I had a lot of support from my brothers and their wives, and we kind of tried to navigate through the whole process. And we got through the wake, the funeral, the aftermath of it, the impact of it, and I went back to Florida again. That seems to be my happy place down at Disney.
To kind of recharge yourself?
No, more so to figure out what direction I was going to go in. And
do you feel at that time, because she had recently passed, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like she was still with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She still is today. Yeah, one of the things I learned during the entire grieving process was we had been praying for her recovery to Saint Therese. And Saint Therese, in one of her passages, said to spread roses throughout the world. And if you notice on everything that I send out from this office, it has a rose on my stationery. It has a rose on my notepad.
Do many people know that?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. It's probably the first time that I've revealed it. Maybe people in the inner office might know that. But to keep her in my life, I have a bouquet of roses. Anything that I can find when I go out publicly. If I go into an antique store, I look for things that have roses on them. And I've built this kind of a shrine to her.
And how long were you married?
42 years.
And throughout those 42 years, how did she make you a better man?
Well, obviously...
I mean, you got good style.
Helping
right?
to raise the kids. She was always an educator, but we had a firm belief that the kids would be better off in the long run if she stayed home with them. So I worked multiple jobs. I was teaching, I was coaching, I was working on the weekends part-time, and she stayed home for 14 years and until my youngest daughter was old enough to go to school. Then she went back to work.
So the decision then, did somebody come up to you and they were like, we want you to run for mayor? Yes. How did that discussion happen?
Yeah. Well, at that point, I had already served. I was in my second term as a citywide councilman, and Mayor Fung was term limited. So we knew that somebody had to replace him. At first, it looked like the council president was going to do it. But I had Mayor Fung and former Mayor Trafficante call me in and ask me if I had any interest. So when I went to Florida... Did you know
that was coming?
No. But when I went to Florida, that was my mindset to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And again, I've always felt that I needed to have a purpose every day to get up and be motivated, energized to go to work.
Do you feel like being in service to others is where you can come alive and you can be the best version of yourself?
I think that's a family trait. You know, if you look at all my brothers, my oldest brother's an educator, teacher, coach. My second brother, Chris, worked with Special Olympics for 35 years. My brother Joe was a Cranston police officer for 25 years.
So these are like values that were inherently in you.
Absolutely. And my youngest brother, Kevin, was a state trooper for 25 years. So we have that inbred in our family, probably from our parents, who were fantastic as parents, trying to raise 5 boys and a daughter, 6 of us. And they kind of set the example. And my dad used to tell me all the time, remember your name and your word. And he used to say, if it's not true, don't say it. If it's not yours, don't take it. And those things stuck in my head as an adult.
I think one of the things I pride myself on, and I don't feel like a lot of people do it now, is like your word is your bond. And I feel like back in the day, like if someone said something, like your honor meant, you meant it. And I feel like nowadays that people say stuff and they never actually do it. But they have no intention of doing it. You must see that in politics.
Well, I did, ironically, because when they first asked me to run for mayor, I told everybody no. Because I wasn't ready.
You were playing hard to get?
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I was questioning my experience. Did I have the life skills to carry over to be the leader of the city? And I mean, it's a CEO of a $300 million organization.
Right.
And you have to be fair to everybody, the taxpayers, constituents, elderly, senior affairs, recreation, kids. So there's a lot going with it. And, 55% of the budget goes to the school department. So it's a balancing act. And I wanted to make sure that I could maneuver my way through those skills to get the job done.
Yeah, I think coming into any kind of position that's new, there's inherent traits that you have and some you don't know that you need. Mm-hmm. So how was it different from what you expected mayor to be and what it actually is?
Well, fortunately, I relied a lot on my years of coaching and teaching. My master's degree was in education. My coaching at the college taught me that you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. So the first thing I started to do, once I decided to do this, was to surround myself with the best brains, the best economic people, the best people that I could find. Machiavelli was a great thinker of the past and told us to, be loved and feared at the same time, as long as you're not hated.
Right.
So sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And that type of leadership, I like to analyze both sides, talk to my group, and then make a decision.
And so for you then, if you had to name one thing, which is the best part of being mayor, what would that be?
Meeting constituents, listening to their day-to-day things that affect them in the city, whether it's potholes, clearing snow, putting in new roads, building new schools. I mean, obviously, right between our house, your house and mine, is a brand new school going up, which is going to be 21st century, state-of-the-art form of education. And I'm anxious to have my name on that school and see the kids getting there next year. So those are the things that initially come to mind. I have a better feeling of giving than receiving. So I'm giving back to my community. I know that I have help from up above in my guidance.
Sure.
And I have a great group of people that tell me what I can and can't do, and then I have to make that decision.
And so is there a worst part of being mayor?
Yeah, I've lost a lot of my anonymity.
Okay.
I've had situations.
I mean, you just told everybody where we live now.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm proud of my Garden City roots and in my neighborhood and how it's transformed, and being a big believer in the ideas of Walt Disney. I've been down there a couple hundred times, lived there, coached down in Florida, and the magic of Disney is the ability to look at the impossible and bring it to life.
Is that one of the big things that you learned from Walt Disney? Like, use your imagination to think out of the box, and then you can even solve problems by thinking that way.
Absolutely.
Right, versus being limited?
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a big discussion yesterday in this office about, and it was packed, it was full, with leaders of the city in terms of how we were going to finish paying off the new schools that we were going to build. And I thought about it, thought out of the box, and came up with a resolution, and everybody seemed to agree with the direction I was taking it.
So speaking of Disney, you may know this, but like when Walt Disney was designing his buildings for inside the parks, he put the windows all the way down to the ground, so the kids could actually see into the windows.
Sure.
Right. That's kind of his way of thinking. And when we talk about running the city as like one of the biggest CEOs ever, the Walt Disney way of training their employees is like, I believe, top in the world.
Sure.
Right. And companies actually take their whole crew and go through the Disney training.
Exactly.
Right. And so in my business, when we do team training, we talk about the number one question that guests ask a cast member? You know what it is?
I do know one. When they ask what time does the park close, their response is, we're open until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. So their response is positive in nature.
Exactly. So the question that we go off of is, the number one question could be that, similar, what time is the 5 o'clock parade? And then they have to be like, Mayor, it's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock.
Right? Like, so like that just shows you, especially with the public, you know, everyone has their own beliefs, their ideas, the things going on.
Mm-hmm.
But a seeming question, which is very obvious, they have to make it where that person can save face, you know, and they're not going to feel bad, because Disney's all about making people happy.
Sure.
Do you feel like making people happy is really the cornerstone of what your job is?
Yeah. I've taken those concepts, for example, Mainstreet, and I've brought it here into this office. So the first day on the job, we started our Mainstreet program. And right now we're into phase 3.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, the first one was the renovation of Rolfe Square, the revitalization of it to bring back small business, to resurrect kind of a Renaissance theory, to bring it back to life, the Park Theater as the cornerstone. And the first day on the job, that's exactly what we were doing. We were cleaning the street, checking the sidewalks, preparing for a new Rolfe Square.
Is there like somewhere someone can go, like a citizen, to see actually like what is going on?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, we have websites that promote the next phase. We have a planning department that is working on projects right now. For example, our second project was Patuxent Village in preparation for the 250th Gatsby Parade. And that was the 250th anniversary of the Gatsby. And I wanted the Cranston side, because it was bringing national attention to the city, to look as good as it could be. So we redid the sidewalks, the crosswalks, the street, put all new lanterns in, and revitalized that area. Now we're bringing in walking traffic, foot traffic, to eat at Basta, to go to Bagel Express. And that whole area now has been revitalized.
So when you were campaigning, you were already well known in Cranston, right? Mm-hmm. Did you go door to door? How did you do that?
Yeah, I did. I had former Mayor Trafficante and my chief of staff, Tony Moretti, as my campaign advisors. And we built a staff. We built a campaign office over on Oak Lawn Avenue. And the first thing we had to do was win the primary. I ran against Mike Farina, who was the council president. So we had first thing we did was take a poll, and using that info from that poll, we targeted X number of Republicans that had voted the last 2 years, and then X number of independents. And we concentrated on knocking on those doors first.
Okay. That makes sense, because like data doesn't lie.
Exactly.
Right? You have to have a plan. So what did you learn about the Cranston people as you were campaigning? And did you actually try, well, you're in the primary, right? So I guess the next question would be, like, after you win the primary, do you go after Democrats too to try to get them on your side? But the first question is, what did we learn about the Cranston people?
Well, they're divided politically. Ironically, there's more Democrats registered. There's about 30,000 plus Democrats registered in Cranston, about 9,000 registered Republicans, and about 40,000 plus independents. So I learned that immediately. And one of my mentors early on was former Governor Dupree. And I sat with him one day, just like this, sat on a couch, and we talked for a couple of hours in his house. I said, if I'm going to get into this, what do I have to learn? And he told me the story about going up to Kennebunkport to meet with President Bush. And at the same time, the Speaker of the House in those days was Tip O'Neill. And how did they get things done at the national level? And here he is sitting there watching, crossing over, being nonpartisan to accomplish things for the nation. And I took that same concept and said that will work in the city of Cranston. That's why it's worked over the course of many years, because we've had 3 Democratic mayors. Everyone else has been a Republican mayor, yet the council in many times is dominated by the other party. So you have to cross over. You have to work. And I've always maintained that my final decision will always be what's in the best interest of the city.
And I think that's what it has to be.
It
right?
has to be. Yeah.
So it's almost like if you have a coaching mentality or a teaching mentality, you have to see like, how can I make this concept or how can I make this work for this person, right? So when you're planning out like, so how can I work with this Democrat, right? Like, what do they need from me? Because it can't always be take, because no one's going to respond to that, right? So how can I help them? How can we come together? But I think the basis of that is if you both have the inherent concept of wanting the best for the city, it'll come together.
Absolutely.
Right? And do you think like having the coaching mentality, being a teacher, you already thought like that, right? Because there's kids that you can't, that are hard to get to, and you have to kind of think out of the box. How do I reach this child?
One of the things that I learned when I was in Disney on vacation was from the car to Mainstreet. How do you get there and how do you get back? And their attention to detail, from the parking spot to getting on a tram that takes you to the monorail, that takes you to the front door, through security and then into Main Street. They're always one step ahead.
Yeah.
And that really hit home with me, that I have to be one step ahead of the posse, so to speak.
Sure.
And I try to make decisions with that in mind. Sometimes it's out of the box. It's a vision that you want to accomplish. Right now, I'm working on 3 projects in the city with 3 Democratic council people. In Ward 3, we're working with Councilman Donegan on a splash pad over near Bain. Councilman Ferry asked us to help him with a project over in front of Dew Temple to redo the basketball courts in the park in honor of a former athlete at Cranston East that got killed tragically in a car accident. And the biggest one is working with Councilwoman Germain in Ward 2 to resurrect the Buffalo Pool. You know, due to COVID and due to a variety of things, we had an engineering report that told us structurally it was not safe. So it's been sitting there vacant between COVID and trying to find funds to resurrect it. We've been working on that project to get the pool reopened.
Do you find that, like, so we say, like, attitude is more important than skill, right? Because, like, skill, you can learn it, you can skill stack, or you could just outsource it. But attitude is really where you make the change. And it seems like, because everybody, from my viewpoint, likes you, you're able to work with other people. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's an inherent skill, I think. The focus on communication skills, confidence in my ability. And there was a learning curve with that. I think I'm a very good listener. That's a quality that I learned both as an educator, in studying, and listen. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, you can fix things by doing things the way they used to be.
Sure.
But you can still have a vision for what you would like them to be.
Yeah, I think it's important that you should never be the most well-read or the smartest person in the room, because then you're not learning anything, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've learned is I don't really care who gets the credit for something. You know, if the school gets built, that was a collaborative effort. It wasn't the mayor. That was the superintendent, the school committee, the city, the teachers, the constituents. We all got together and shared this vision. And the same thing with these projects that I'm working on with the council. I don't care who gets credit for building a new basketball court.
Right.
All I know is it's best for the city when it's finished.
So how do you then, so when we talk about being a teacher, an educator, a coach, basically what we're doing is we're trying to take somebody and make them a better version of themselves. So how is your administration attempting or trying to make the citizens of Cranston better versions of themselves? And the reason I say that is I believe a lot of times, like in politics, we just give them money to take care of something, but we're not actually teaching them anything, right?
Yeah, the education formula is what I refer to as messaging. What's the message that the people need to know? And I'll give you a good example. Over the next couple of days, we're expecting drops in temperatures
Sure.
that are historic in nature. And we've had a few things in my administration, unfortunately, that have been historic. The COVID issue, the Great Flood that we had, and now this temperature drop that's going to get into the lower teens over the next 48 hours. So what did we do ahead of time to prepare? What's our messaging? Yeah. I sat down with our coordinator of media and asked him to come up with a template. And then once we finished the template, it kind of gave some direction. And then we used mass media, whether it's the internet, social media, and we put that message out there so that people are aware of where the warming centers are going to be. They're enlightened to how cold it's going to be. This is not something that we can play around with.
Do you consult with other mayors or even the governor on something like this?
Absolutely. Yeah. Interestingly, the last 2 days, I had lunch with the League of Cities and Towns, which is all the mayors and town administrators get together once a month. And we also get together for lunch and share ideas. So I did that last Thursday. And then yesterday, I spent over 2 hours with the governor in his office talking about money, finances, state pilot programs in lieu of taxes. Obviously, our big issue is the prison property.
Sure.
And, what benefit does the state get? What does the city get in return? And does that formula work? So there was a messaging that we brought to the governor that he listened to, and he understands the politics of dealing with budgets and taxes, and people get very upset when they hear the word taxation. Yet at the same time, the bond rating agencies like Fitch look at us and say they recognize that there may be an economic problem going on due to COVID. There's no brick and mortars coming in. The amount of revenue coming into the city is down, yet inflation is up 8%.
Yeah. Just
like it is in everybody's house.
And I think that becomes one of the central issues with education, is the fact that we don't teach finances in education. And what worked for my parents, or even maybe your generation or your parents, is like, if you just put your money in the bank, right? And that, let's just say there's like a 2% interest rate, but inflation's higher than that, then you actually lose money over time.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas even my parents' little mentality is you put money in the bank and you stay there. Well, you're just losing money, right? Because inflation is decreasing that. And to be more transparent, the banks then use the money you gave them to invest anyway.
Sure.
Right? So do you think there needs to be some changes in education as far as like what we're teaching these children?
I taught civics for 20 years. It was the model class, and it was an inclusion class over at Cranston East. I think that class should be mandatory for every kid that comes through high school.
And what would you cover for topics?
I'd cover home finances. I would cover the daily life of raising a family. And those are the things that I had in my curriculum. I had kids do a project. I gave them a job. They picked it out of a hat.
Love it.
It had a salary. And then I said, okay, here's your bills. Let's pay your bills.
I think that would be incredible.
And I said, you can get an extra $50,000 if you get married and have your wife go to work. The kids were trying to figure out, how am I going to pay the electric bill?
Yeah.
Because my parents do that now.
Right.
I use that with my baseball players forever. If you go back and ask them, what's the one lesson that he taught you? I ask them, what do you need to pay your electric bill when you get to be an adult? You need an education.
Yeah.
You need that diploma. And that was the carrot that I put in front of my ball players.
So let's switch gears to like entrepreneurship. And you talked earlier about how you want to be ahead of the posse, right? So for my business, which is like a self-defense, a fitness studio, we were planning during COVID, like how we were going to train and come out of it. Mm-hmm. So we were already putting the steps in. We were doing our sales training. Now it's 40%, I believe it's 40% of fitness studios went out of business nationwide during COVID. We were in the 60% who then ended up flourishing after because of the steps that we took during COVID. Like we didn't stop training. We didn't give up. It's that whole like martial arts mentality of like, right now it stinks, but this isn't how it's always going to be. So as far as entrepreneurship goes, what is the city doing to encourage small business owners to come into Cranston, right? Are there programs to help them? Because even with COVID, no one knew what was going on.
Sure.
So a lot of businesses like floundered, went out, lost revenue. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, the ones that survived are now enrolled in a program called Take It Outside. They've taken, for example, the restaurants. People couldn't no longer go into restaurants until they put up plexiglass and isolated people. And I felt that post-COVID, the best thing people needed to do was get out of the house. You know, believe it or not, our trash bill went up for the city, $1.2 million, because people stayed home and they had more trash, more food, more take it out from the restaurants and ate at home. And as a result, our landfill tipping fees went up $1.2 million. So I have to make that up. So I've got to now go around to small businesses. Our economic development director, Franklin Paulino, goes around and gives applications to restaurants, small businesses, and say, if you want to take your business outside and spend up to $10,000 to attract customers, we will reimburse you.
Are there other incentives for businesses that can't do that? So like if I'm a gym, I can't take you outside when it's snowing. I can't take you outside when it's 90 degrees out. So is there anything that we're doing now in Cranston to encourage new businesses to open, or hey, here's a class where this is what you need to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think what you need to do is look at not just the business itself, but what surrounds the business.
Such as?
Well, the Park Theater is a good example. On the opening night, the one thing that I did was, and it was a sellout crowd, I was the greeter as people came in, but I stepped outside and looked up Earl Street. The foot traffic was the most I've seen in years. Boston was booming, Alani's was booming, the new restaurants, the Chinese restaurant was booming, El Alam's across the street was booming. So people were coming in to the park, but they were spreading their wealth to the other businesses. And that's kind of the Main Street concept.
Okay. So how would you get more things like that in the city? Do we have programs for that?
Yeah, the third thing I'm doing right now is Knightsville.
Okay.
I'm not touching the businesses. The businesses are fine. But how do I attract businesses so that the foot traffic increases? That those businesses, the restaurants, especially the restaurant district, goes from here to here. How do I do that? Well, sometimes you have to show them this to get that.
Right, okay.
So the first phase of our project is to redo the Knightsville Park.
So to make it more appealing
Make
for
that more
businesses to come
appealing.
in.
Absolutely. And the businesses are there. What I have a vision of is people will come in, we'll have concerts, we will have outdoor activities, Christmas tree lightings in that park. Because now it's going to have a brand new fountain. It's going to have a new pergola walkway. It's going to have a brand new gazebo with a grassy knoll for people to sit and just kind of come and hang out and be outside.
We're going to make sure that there's police around that grassy knoll.
Well, the whole thing will have security on it. Security cameras to make sure that it's taken care of.
Yeah, no third story repositories. So basically, we're going to revitalize Cranston to make it more appealing to attract businesses.
Exactly. And phase 2 of that is the landscape, which would be the sidewalks. Going to be all new sidewalks, all new lighting, all new trees. And the final phase is the street itself and a new parking lot next to the big tower.
Okay.
So that people have a place to park and then walk.
So one thing I want to ask you about COVID, I'm a physical therapist, right? My doctorate's in physical therapy, my bachelor's degree is in exercise science. I'm a fitness guy. One of the main things I did in COVID is don't go to the gym, just stay home, right? And I get it, we didn't know what was going on. However, we do know that working out increases your immune system, right? Your mental clarity, your just physical prowess. As a coach and an athletic director, did you have any thoughts about that when that was going on? Now, again, we didn't have all the information, but telling people closing gyms, and they even closed us again later on after, there was a surge, just the gyms.
Yeah, I know when we were going through it, the big thing was to disinfect the machines.
Sure.
So now when you go in and work out, you're supposed to, for the next person, it's almost like golf teaches you, for the person behind you, rake the trap, fix the divot. It's not for you, it's for the people behind you. You have to do the same thing in the healthcare industry. Clean the treadmill after you've used it. Clean the barbells after you've used it.
So do you think they could have done that like in COVID? Listen, if I was in charge, I would have been like, listen, if you want to keep yourself safe, you need to eat healthy, you need to work out.
Yeah, the big problem I saw when COVID hit was there was no reinventing the wheel because we had never seen it before. Right. And that made it difficult. I mean, Governor Raimondo at the time said, we've got X number of vaccinations coming in. Get your city vaccinated with no direction. So I had to get my team together and say, okay, who needs it first? Let's go with the elderly population because they're the most affected. Those that are sick, those that may be working with kids. So we went elderly, teachers, kids, and then the general population.
Yeah, I think it's important to prioritize.
And we did that. But that wasn't like we had a template to follow. We had to create that. And we got through it, but there was an awful lot of trial and error.
And what did you were mayor then?
Yes.
What did you learn from that experience?
That you have to think out of the box sometimes, that you have to be fair to everyone, you have to show empathy to the citizens. See, I was never looking to move to another office. I was never looking to move into this office, to be blunt with you. But things happen for a reason. And I'm focused on doing what's best for the city of Cranston.
And I think that's important for many reasons. But number one, I feel like when someone, wants to be mayor and then they want to go somewhere else, then their decisions are based on where they want to go and not actually doing what's best for their citizens, right?
Well, there's a certain amount of self-interest in where do you want your life to be. But I'm a little bit different than some of my predecessors. They were younger. They were still raising families. I mean, I'm past all of that.
Yeah. Do you have aspirations to run for governor?
No.
Okay. So
no.
This is...
No, I've been asked. I was asked the last election. I told them no. I've sat down with some of the higher ranking members of my party and told them that that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the city of Cranston to do the best job that I can and then pass the keys on to somebody else.
So in business, we talk about like speed is king, right? So, and you talk about decision making. How much are you hindered to actually make decisions? So like from my viewpoint, like I own the business. I can get the data. I'm like, this is the decision we have to make and we make it fast. And if we need to pivot, we pivot, right?
Yeah. In government, you learn, especially as a history teacher, I knew what was ahead of me when it came to government affairs. I use the analogy, it's like trying to turn around the Queen Mary in the middle of a river. You can get it done, but eventually it's going to take a long time. And the reason it takes a long time to start from an idea to finalizing it is all the layers of bureaucracy in between. See,
do you think that hinders?
It hinders. It hinders in one sense because it takes longer to get things done. But ultimately, when it's done the right way, and the checks and balances in between have been monitored. How much are you spending? Is it a fair bid? Did the businesses bid properly? Did government protect the lowest bidder? And then I think the best example right now is Topgolf. I was working on that as a councilman 6 years ago. So from that first idea, that first meeting with the Capianano Corporation, and then meeting with the Topgolf people, and I've been to a few of them in New Orleans, in Orlando, in Nashville. I've seen them. Most recently was in Myrtle Beach. So I know what's coming. And people say, oh, golf. It's not just golf.
Is it frustrating though? Because like that's over a 6-year period.
Yeah.
Where if you could be like, okay, this is already in for 5 years, and people could see it. You know, is that frustrating?
It is, but I know what the end result is going to be. The vision. Imagine what Disney was thinking when he took 10 years of an environmental company to study the wind and weather patterns before he put one brick in the ground, because he knew that part of Central Florida, which has heavy rains, lightning, thunderstorms, hurricanes, was safe to put his business.
So it's like measure twice, cut once?
Absolutely.
So the sense that I'm getting, because we've known each other, but we've never really talked. So my sense of your character, which I kind of already knew, but this is, you know, more clear to me now, is the fact that like your fear, like you want the best for Cranston, like this is the highest you're going to go, right? So you're really focused on this.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about politics on like a national level, I don't feel, and I'll take the heat on me, I don't feel that these politicians actually want what's best for everybody. They're more self-serving. I guess one of the top examples would be how like Nancy Pelosi is the greatest stock trader of all time, right? And why? Obviously, because like you know information that other people don't know. As a politician on this level, what do you see at the national level? And is it too self-serving?
Let me put it this way. I've met with and worked with Senator Whitehouse, most recently with Senator Reid, Congressman Langevin, Congressman Cicilline. We work with them to get things, for example, federal grants to rebuild the pool. Congressman Langevin helped us to get $700,000 for that. Senator Reid helped us get almost $1 million for our Mainstreet in Knightsville. Senator Whitehouse just got us a $500,000 grant for our police department so we can look at how to defuse situations and maybe do a different way of policing as we send a detail out to, let's say, a domestic violence problem. We might be sending a psychologist or a sociologist with them to defuse some of the national problems that we're seeing with police enforcement. So those are the things that benefit the city.
Sure.
Politically, what do they do? Obviously, they have certain ways and means of getting that money back to their constituents. And we're fortunate. We're fortunate here in Cranston. Jack Reed is a big advocate. He was born and raised in this city. He does a lot for us.
When someone's campaigning, a politician, do you think it would be better if, say, we're both running against each other?
Mm-hmm.
The city gives us both $50,000. That's it. There's no raising funds. Because I think one of the issues is like when someone's running for something else, they start campaigning before their term as a mayor is done, which I think is wrong. You know, if this is your job, this is what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We both get $50,000. Best man and woman wins. How do you think that would change politics? Would you like that? Because I'm saying that, then there's no favors. Like I don't owe Zach favors because he threw me $1.5 million.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I would say that looking at our Constitution, the First Amendment would be in violation if we did that. Open and fair elections are basically, if I work harder than you, I'm rewarded for that. If I go out and raise more money to run for office, I'm rewarded. If I go out and get a better message than you, I'm rewarded. Do
you think it'd be a more even playing field if we both have the same resources, though?
No, because, I mean, I started with $2,000 in my pocket that I took out of my own account to get my campaign going. Did I spend only $2,000? Absolutely not. So I had to find ways to get my message out there. So first thing I did was I went out and hustled to try to raise money, to borrow money, to put in the bank, and then to get my message out there.
So we talk about you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Which means like, you know, even when your wife was going through everything, you want to be there for her.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't take care of yourself first as she's going through that, you can't be there for her.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're depleted. When we talk about America as a nation, right, I feel like we're not taking care of ourselves first. We're taking the money that should be going to take care of us first and giving it overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Now listen, I'm not saying you shouldn't help people, but you should help people once you're stable. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's lonely at the top. And the United States is at the top. And poorer nations need our help. Our allies need our help.
But can we stay there to help them?
Well, I mean, we spread a lot of money around the world. Right now, we're sending military tanks over to Ukraine. But I see that the Ukrainian people want and need our help. Somewhere down the road, we want them to be self-sufficient. And I get your point. But if you go back and look at the formation of the Special Olympics program, certain segment of our population needed the help. And Eunice Schreiber took that concept and created a worldwide concept to help a certain segment of the population that we were turning our backs on, that we were putting, for example, in Rhode Island, we had lad school down in Wakefield, and we just isolated, and instead of that, we now include. And I think we need to do that with certain minority groups. There's a certain minority population now that follows a direction that kind of divides the country. And I want to really take diversity, for example, and make it inclusive. I've on many occasions have ended my speeches at different events with a quote that I developed, one Cranston, one heartbeat. And I think that's important for the direction of the city to get to that 2030 vision, which is what I'm thinking about. You know, that's going to be around, before we know it, 6 more years, 7 more years. 2030 will be here. What's our city going to look like?
Do you feel that legacy is important for you?
No.
It's more about the city?
No, I know down the road, when I'm finished doing this job, that I'll have given it my best, that the city will be better off than when I walked in the door.
Yeah. So that's the same mentality I have when I meet people, right? Whether through physical therapy, self-defense, fitness, like my job is to make you smile and to make you a better version of yourself. So switching gears to the Garden City School, right? Mm-hmm. So we both live near it, which is impressive. It's massive, right? Do we feel it was a smart decision to allot all that money to one school when the other Cranston schools are actually in need of renovations? So instead of spreading it out.
Well, the first thing we did was go to the voters to see what they thought. And
was that a decision, like Garden City versus like put that money towards 5 schools?
Well, it was towards 5 schools. For example, Eden Park was the first school that got a segment of that money. See, we put a bond referendum together for $147 million. That was not just for Garden City. That was renovations at Cranston West, Park View, looking at Eden Park and adding another wing to it, which included indoor gymnasium, looking at Garden City, and fewer is better is the concept. So the thought in education is we're going to take 2 schools and make 1.
Okay.
So ultimately, Waterman will be empty, and we'll use that for other resources. So Waterman and Garden City will be combined into 1 school. The next step is Gladstone. Gladstone will be completely leveled, and from that point on, we'll move forward with Gladstone and Arlington into 1 school. So that will free up Arlington.
So I understand the benefit of having 1 facility versus many. But for the children, how is coming together in 1 school going to benefit them? Is it smaller class sizes because there's more teachers? Is there more, technology facilities? Is there more mingling between different cultures, right? Because I went to Stonehill, it's mostly 1 culture,
Sure.
Italians, right? And can you speak to that?
Well, the open concept I brought here into City Hall. The room that we're sitting in right now
Very nice.
was old and dingy with curling wallpaper. And we took the concept of a cell block, which was one table with 20 chairs around it, and created a more comfortable atmosphere. This is what education is going to be like. You can have 12 people sit here and have a conversation and share and learn from each other the same way you could around that office table. But I felt that this was more appealing, more comfortable, more welcoming. So this is what the schools are going to do. You're not going to have a classroom anymore.
Is it more the open level plan? Is it more to foster discussions between the children and the teachers?
Well, 21st century education is student-centered. You throw out the concept, and then they learn from each other, and then you go over and moderate. And I use that in my own classes, even though I was in a cell block type classroom. I would take the desks and put 4 here, 4 there, 4 there, give every group a project, then rotate the group.
And I think that's the best way to learn, because I remember we would just, when they were the social studies history teacher, would just write notes on the board. Yeah. And for 45 minutes, you would just copy the notes. But that's how it was back then, So I think, especially with technology and alternative, listen, I went to college for 8 years. Now there's alternatives to college where, if you get your high school degree, you can learn the stuff that you have to learn on YouTube now.
Sure.
Right? There's entrepreneurs teaching entrepreneurship, which colleges don't teach. When we talk about budgets, so correct me if I'm wrong, is the renovations on the Garden City School, is that over budget? I heard there was $15 million over budget.
Well, the cost of inflation doesn't affect just the household. It affects businesses, the cost of lumber, the cost of trade, the cost of cement. Everything's going up on a national average, 8%.
Which is understandable. So my question would be then, so if I have a business and I contract out to this assistant or this company to do a job, and then we agree that this is what I'm going to pay you to do this job, right? That's what I pay you, right? Because that's our agreement.
Sure.
So then if that's the case and we have a contract with whoever it is, why would the city be responsible to pay them just because inflation went up? Now, if inflation went down and they make more profit, I don't think they'd give us money back.
Do you want to get the building finished? Or do you want them to walk off the job? Because they can pick and choose what job they want to do at this point.
Well, since it's capitalism, could you not go to somebody else to finish it?
Because there's nobody else available. Try hiring somebody. It took us 7 months to get a finance director. We open up a job here in the city. We may get 3 or 4 applicants. We have a police academy or a fire academy. They used to get 400 applications. We're lucky if we get 25 now.
And why do you think that is?
Well, people have their choice. The population can now work from home. They have, like you said, technology to get their job done. Times have changed. No different than when we industrialized from an agricultural to an industrial society. Some people lost their jobs and some people got new jobs.
Yeah, and so me just playing devil's advocate, because it is a global economy, would it be possible then, so they walk off the job, so you kind of violate everything that we had in agreement, right? So accountability-wise and reputation-wise, if you walk off the job because you're demanding more money off me, it's almost like you're holding me ransom. In my opinion, could we not just go out of state and bring other people in?
Well, they've already done that. But one thing people don't understand when it comes to municipal budgets, we have a budget that is run separately than the city budget, and it's the school department. They're like a separate government. They have their own board of directors, which is the school committee. We give them X number of dollars. And once we do that, we can't tell them how to spend it. We can sit and work with them, try to come up with a mutual understanding. But the bottom line is they have the money.
And you said the school department is 55% of the budget?
Yes.
Okay. You worked in the school department for a long time. Do you believe that people in the school department are overspending? There's a bloated budget, and things could be more efficient?
I think teachers are vastly underpaid and underappreciated. I think teachers are in the 6-figure category, no different than a lawyer or a doctor. 6 years of education, 8 years of education.
But as far as like, let's say facilities, right? Overspending in areas.
I don't see that. I don't see that. Again, the cost of running an operation, there's a fine-tooth comb when it comes to electricity, heating a building, and sometimes you have to get lucky. Right now, we have X number of dollars ready for winter storms. Knock on wood, we haven't had snow yet, so that budget's still there.
We put to the warm incentives. So is there anybody that goes into like something like the school? Because for me as a business owner, if that's 55% of my budget, I need to have other eyes on like what's being spent. You know, I need the itemized list. Does anyone ever go in and like look at that list and be like, wow, you spent way too much on this? Or your custodians could actually be taking care of this versus you're outsourcing doing that.
Yeah, there's a project manager, there's a person in charge of the building, there's a central administrator who goes out and checks on those things. And you have to rely on their ability. Hopefully they're telling you the truth.
But do we ever have like an outside person come in?
Well,
right?
we do because we audit the books every year. So again, that's all that layer of bureaucracy that takes things to that next level. We can't just tax and spend.
Right. You shouldn't.
We may take that money and then put it out for bid and not spend it until we're authorized.
So for you, what would be your definition of a successful life?
Making the lives of people around me better.
And do you think you do that?
I hope I do. I hope I do. I'm not trying to do things for personal gain. You know, and when you have that type of vision, I mean, Walt Disney didn't do it because he wanted his name on the front of the park. He did it because he wanted to make people happy from all over the world. And at a smaller scale, to take that vision and make a better Cranston is going to make my life better. That's how I feel I'm living right now. And again, I'm doing certain things for the sake of loved ones, some that have passed, my dad, my wife, my sister.
And so on a personal level, how proud of you do you think your wife would be right now?
She's smiling down. One of the things I've learned in the last 3 years since her passing is to look at my grandchildren. I have 2 boys and 2 girls, 4 of them. And I look at them and try to find the qualities of her in them. And that sustains me. That keeps me going.
So you know that my business is on Dyer Ave, right? Do you know who that's named after?
No, I don't.
Yeah, nobody really does, right?
Yeah.
So
I've asked the same question about Hubie Bain.
So it was actually named after Elijah Dyer. I had to look this up.
Okay.
Who was a former governor or mayor. It doesn't, okay. No disrespect to him, but ain't no one knows who he is. Mm-hmm. How do I go about renaming Dyer Ave to Bochner Boulevard?
Give back to the community.
Okay, that's what I got to do. All right. I mean, I just think that Bochner Boulevard has a much better ring than Dyer Avenue.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was there last night.
You were telling me.
There was a terrible accident there that I went to, but Dyer Avenue is an artery that at one point, and an interesting point, if you want to take a good look at Dyer Avenue, go to the top of the Sprague Mansion, where Governor Sprague, Mayor Sprague, who became the governor, had a window up at the very top of the building. And if you climb the staircases up to the top, you can see the surrounding area, because there weren't trees. It was agricultural. It was farming, and he'd go up there to watch his workers. Many of them were Irish, because that was the wave of immigrants that came in, and ultimately the death penalty came as a result of that.
Of what?
There was an argument that ensued about some of the migrants showing up drunk to work.
Well, they're Irish.
They were Irish, yeah, which stereotypes them. Which, if you made that same comment about Jews or blacks or any other ethnic group, you'd be in violation of.
I can say it about Jews because I'm Jewish.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can.
and Catholics
You
because I'm
can.
Catholic. So
Yeah.
I got a few.
There you go.
Yeah.
But the point is, there was an argument between one of the workers and the son of Mr. Sprague, which led to a confrontation. The next day, they found the son of Sprague on the banks of the river, dead. Due to the current climate at that time period, where they looked at Irish immigrants as they're taking our jobs, they're the migrant workers who were called muckers. We were just getting into the horse and buggy type society, so they took the job of cleaning up the streets after the horses. So they did the things that nobody else wanted to do. The Italians came in and dug ditches for the gas companies, for example. They were immigrants at that time period. But they were also looked down upon because they were immigrants. And as a result, when the police wanted to find out who killed the governor's son, they blamed the Irish kid. Well, the Irish kid went to trial and was found guilty and was hung. Weeks later, they found out that he was the wrong guy.
Was this the start of the death penalty in Rhode Island or like everywhere?
That was the end of the death penalty.
Oh, that was the end? Oh, I got you. Okay.
In Rhode Island. When they found out that he was hung and somebody else committed the murder, then our legislators at that time period got rid of the death penalty. Yeah. That's why we don't have it today.
And I think a lot of times when you go through that contrast or things like that, like that's when you make changes.
Sure.
Right? So my last question for you is someone's watching this and they're not where they want to be, right? They're not living the life they want to be. As a mayor, as a teacher, as a coach, what advice do you give them that they can implement to start living a better life?
Start with yourself. Stop worrying about what other people think. Do the things that make you a better person. Since I've taken office, I've lost 30 pounds.
You look great.
I work out every day. First thing I do every morning is sit-ups. Every single day.
And you said you want to do this interview with no shirt on, but I was like, we have to have a shirt.
No, I don't think people want to see that.
Okay.
But I'm now more concerned with what I buy when I go out for groceries. First thing I look at is the sugar content so that the diabetes gets under control. But physically, and that comes with some maturity, that you understand that if you can't take care of your own body, you can't take care of other people.
Correct.
So that's where I start. I read books on self-confidence. I've become more focused in my religious thoughts and beliefs. And again, I always keep that vision of her, my wife, in my head.
She's like your guiding light.
Absolutely.
And just to kind of top it off, basically what you're saying is to live the best life, you really have to nourish your mind, you have to nourish your body, and you have to nourish your spirit.
Sure.
And do what makes you happy.
Well, when you look at the first wave of democracy, going back to Greece, the Athenians took the ideas of the Spartans, which was really, they were more warriors. They were concerned with fighting and gaining more territory. Where the Athenians came out and said, it's mind and spirit. You've got to think and work on your own body. So that type of democracy is something that we need to carry over today. I see kids, what the stuff that they eat, the lack of physical fitness that they have. We're going to be in trouble as a country down the road in terms of adult food that they're eating now. We're going to see a lot of diabetes.
Yep. It's like 80% of people are overweight.
Heart problems, strokes. With this younger generation, until we learn that taking care of your body will then benefit society. See, we don't want you to be a burden on us.
Right.
We don't want you to be a burden on society. So take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Then you can help others.
And think about your future, where you want to go, and then set goals to achieve it.
Well, long-term and short-term goals are priorities if you want to accomplish something.
I agree, and you were on my goal list to interview you. So I do thank you for this hour.
Oh, Marc, it was a pleasure to sit and talk. And I've done a lot of different interviews with different groups. Gene Valasanti calls me at 7 o'clock in the morning and said, Mayor, would you like to come on the show? I said, oh, no, I'm still laying in bed. What time? He goes, 7:30. And, but I do it. I do it because I think it's important to get your message out there. So I thank you as much as you appreciate this, because it does get the message out. And hopefully the people that watch it have a better understanding of me and a better understanding of how government works. Because a lot of people, all they see is, he just raises taxes.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes when you don't do that, you put the city in a bad situation.
Well, I think it's clear, just from my standpoint, that whatever decisions that you are making, you're doing because you truly believe it's best for the city. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone who watches this will see that. And I do appreciate you being transparent about like your personal life and everything going on. And I wish you the best. Now, we can run again.
We can.
Are we?
That's subject to some more thought. We'll see.
You gotta take a trip to Disney.
We'll see. I just did.
Well, I'll take another.
I did, and I need more time to figure that out. But I want to finish what I've started. I'm very excited about the Chapel View neighborhood with potential for Costco and other businesses coming in there, in addition to Topgolf. And again, those things come in. And Topgolf's a family-oriented place where you can go in and have dinner with your family and have some entertainment fun shooting at a target right in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a great thing for our community, because it's the only one between here and New Jersey. So that's going to help. Mainstreet is going to help. Knightsville is going to help.
Bochner Boulevard, we're doing
Bochner
that.
Boulevard. Just as long as they don't put Hopkins on it.
We might have to. If I need to do like a Bochner-Hopkins Boulevard, I'm down.
You know, we did have a Hopkins as a governor back in the day.
Are you trying to tell me something?
Well, Stephen Hopkins was our first governor, signed the Declaration of Independence. So we do have a history of it. But I did find in research that he owned all the land from Waterfire up to Brown University. And I'm hoping and praying that maybe he left something for me.
Well, I think you got enough staff to find that out for you.
Absolutely.
But Mayor, I appreciate. Thank you for this, and I
always
wish you the
appreciate
best.
it, Marc. Thank you so much.
It was great.
Great.
Hello, my name is Dr. Marc Bochner. Don't forget to check out my new book, Pug Learns to Believe. Hey guys, Dr. Marc here. Now I know a lot of you want to know how we get all these amazing results with our clients, and it comes down to 3 things. The first is fun fitness classes that burn a lot of calories. 2 is giving you an accountability coach to make sure you stay on track and get the best results. And 3 is the nutrition. Included in the nutrition is our food supplements. So we pair with Prestige Labs because I feel they are the best, they have integrity, and they get great results. These are actually the supplements that I take as well. Here's the awesome part. By clicking the link below, you can save 40% off the retail price. So you need that link to actually save 40%. If you just go to the normal site without my link, you're paying full price, okay? So these are the supplements my clients use. If you are interested, definitely click the link below and it'll tell you all about them.